I never thought the sound of a printer would make me smile. But there I was, sitting across from a young lawyer in a grey suit, her office quiet except for the soft hum of that machine, and as it spit out the final page, I laughed. Not the kind of laugh that echoes joy. No, it was quieter, steadier. The kind of laugh that comes from a place so deep inside, even sorrow can't reach it anymore. Because on that final page was everything. My name is Evelyn. I'm 67 years old. I taught second grade for 35 years, raised 3 children, and buried the only man who ever truly understood me, my husband, Martin. He passed 7 years ago after a long battle with heart failure. That loss unraveled parts of me I didn't know existed. I became quieter, softer, and, yes, more emotional. But what they don't tell you about aging is how invisibility becomes the norm. People stop asking how you are. They assume. They nod and walk away. And sometimes, even your own family, the ones you fed, bathed, fought for, start treating you like you're inconvenient. That's how it started, I suppose. I never asked for much. A seat at the table, a photo during holidays, a moment to be remembered. But over the years, the invitations got colder, shorter, the hugs briefer. My birthday was forgotten last year until Leo texted me 2 days later with a dry, "Sorry, things were hectic." I told myself they were busy. Kids, jobs, life. I made excuses for them, like mothers do. But nothing prepared me for the night I was turned into a joke, a literal punchline in a group chat I wasn't supposed to see. It happened 3 months ago, on a Saturday evening at Leo's house. He and his wife, Courtney, hosted a small dinner. Me, my daughter Paige, my oldest son, Daniel, and his wife. The meal was fine. Laughter, clinking glasses. I even brought Martin's famous lemon tart recipe in a glass dish he loved. But midway through the evening, I excused myself. The house was filled with noise, children laughing, wine being poured, and for just a moment, I needed silence. I stepped into the guest bedroom, closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and I let myself breathe. And then the tears came. Not sobs, not theatrics, just soft, private tears. The kind that come when you think no one's watching. I missed Martin. I missed the feeling of mattering. I missed being seen. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that someone was watching. A gentle knock. The door creaked open. "Hey, Evelyn," Courtney said, her tone syrupy. "You okay?" I wiped my eyes, smiled weakly, just a little overwhelmed. She nodded, stepped inside. She knelt by the bed and placed a hand on my knee. I thought it was kindness. A rare moment of tenderness. What I didn't notice, what I didn't think to notice, was her other hand, holding her phone, tilted slightly, camera facing me. She left after a few moments, telling me to take my time. I thought nothing of it. I returned to the table, ate dessert, kissed my grandchildren goodnight, and went home. 2 days later, my phone buzzed. It was Paige. Or, it was supposed to be Paige. She had sent a message meant for someone else. Instead, it came to me. A screenshot of a group chat titled, "The Evelyn Watch Party." At first, I didn't understand. And then I saw it. The thumbnail of the video. Me. Sitting on the edge of that bed. Red-eyed, lips trembling. A fragile moment. Captured without permission. Captioned beneath it. Oscar-worthy performance. Anyone have tissues? Laughing emojis. My hand began to tremble. I opened the image. Read each message. And as I read, my heart didn't just break. It caved. It's strange, isn't it? The way betrayal doesn't feel like a knife. It feels like silence. When I first opened that message from Paige, I didn't react the way people in movies do. There was no screaming, no dropped phone. I just sat there, staring at the screen. My tea had gone cold beside me. The ceiling fan hummed overhead. And the world, as I knew it, stopped spinning. I looked at the names at the top of the group chat. Daniel, Leo, Paige, Courtney, Madeline, my 3 children, and their wives, my entire family. The caption stung, but it was the replies that gutted me. Leo, can't believe she's still grieving. He's been gone what? 7 years? Courtney, every holiday turns into a pity party. Paige, if I start crying over nothing, someone slap me. Madeline, honestly, she should win something for how she pulls it out of nowhere. They laughed at me, not just once, repeatedly, with emojis and gifs, like I was a comedy sketch. They saw my grief not as pain, but as performance. And then, the video played. There I was, my soft sobs caught on tape, the way I held Martin's ring in my hand, the way I whispered his name, a moment I thought was sacred, reduced to a file they shared like gossip. The betrayal didn't come from strangers. It came from the children I raised, the very people who once ran to me with scraped knees and bedtime fears. I had held their secrets, stitched their Halloween costumes, and written checks when times were tight. And now they mocked me, like I was some frail, ridiculous woman who'd overstayed her welcome. My hands began to shake, not from anger, but from disbelief, because deep down, some part of me always knew I didn't quite belong anymore. But this confirmed it. I closed the app, deleted the message. I even turned off my phone. I walked to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. I expected to see devastation, but instead, I saw something else, something I hadn't felt in years. Steel. Underneath the grief, beneath the soft sweaters and quiet smiles, there was someone they forgot about, a woman who had lived through loss, through poverty, through motherhood, through nights of no sleep and days without thanks. They thought my tears meant weakness. They forgot I had survived so much worse. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I didn't scream or send angry texts. I made a cup of tea, and I sat at the kitchen table. And I wrote a list. The list: revoke the power of attorney I signed over to Leo. They told me it was just in case, for medical emergencies, but my gut told me they wanted access. Check the deed on the house. I remembered the conversation last year. You should add one of us to the title. It's just safer. Safer for who call my lawyer. Not just for the will, but for my dignity. The next morning, I went to the filing cabinet in the hall, the one Martin and I always kept in perfect order. Insurance, wills, property titles, copies of every power of attorney and notarized form. My hands moved without hesitation now. I found the form, the one I signed at Leo's kitchen counter, thinking it was harmless. I held it up to the light, and I knew. This wasn't just a betrayal of my emotions. This was planned. Maybe not from the beginning, but certainly somewhere along the way, my family had stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a transaction, a burden, a punchline, a future asset. And now they had crossed a line. You see, I would have forgiven them. I would have forgiven the birthday forgetfulness, the passive-aggressive remarks, even the cold jokes, but secretly recording me in a moment of raw grief, mocking my pain, that wasn't just cruel, that was dangerous, because they thought I would stay silent. They didn't realize that silence was my weapon. I reopened the chat one last time before deleting it. Not because I needed to see it again, because I needed to remember. Every word, every emoji, every little that chipped away at the version of my family I thought still existed. I read it slowly, like a poem carved from betrayal. Daniel, if she starts crying during the toast on Leo's birthday, I swear I'm walking out. Madeline, she did it last year, remember? Same whine, same whimpering. Paige, let's just bring tissues and popcorn. Courtney, or a violin, lol, a violin. To them, my pain was background music, drama, theatre. But the part that truly made my stomach twist, not one of them said, "That's too far." Not one paused and asked, "Are we being cruel?" No one defended me, not my sons, not my daughter. The silence wasn't neutral, it was participation. That was when I stopped thinking of this as a mistake. It wasn't. This was who they had become when they thought I wasn't looking. This was what they said when I wasn't in the room. And then I realized something else. That chat wasn't new. The messages went back months. Photo attachments. Evelyn's meltdown at Paige's baby shower. Another video. Me awkwardly dancing with my granddaughter, edited with clown music. They didn't just start mocking me. They'd been documenting it. A digital scrapbook of my supposed decline. They thought I was losing my mind. That old age had softened my spine, dimmed my awareness. But I saw them now, all of them, clearer than ever. And I saw myself, too. I wasn't just sad. I was angry, not because I cried, but because the people I'd raised into adulthood had grown into cowards who laughed behind doors instead of speaking with compassion, who used technology not to connect, but to cut. That chat was their private theatre, and I was the play. Well, I was done being entertainment. The next morning, I took a walk. Not out of routine, out of purpose. I passed the little bakery Martin used to love, stopped at the bench outside the church where he proposed, and sat quietly. Let the cool morning air fill my lungs. Then I called the lawyer. Her name was Megan. Sharp, clear-eyed. The kind of young woman who doesn't flinch when you say, "I want to take everything back." We met 2 days later. I brought everything. Copies of the video, printed screenshots, the power of attorney document, even the family photo we took last Christmas that I hadn't had the heart to hang. She listened quietly. No raised eyebrows, no fake sympathy. When I finished, she leaned forward and said, "Evelyn, they weaponized your vulnerability. That's not only cruel, it's legally dangerous if they're handling your estate or health affairs." Then she added the words I didn't know I needed to hear. "But you still hold the pen. You get to decide what the next page looks like." I nodded, my throat tight. For the first time in years, I felt like someone wasn't just hearing me. They were seeing me, not as someone fragile, not as an old woman with emotions, but as a person with rights, with choices, with power. We spent the next hour reviewing every document I'd signed in the past 5 years. The power of attorney? Revoked. My will? Under review. The deed to my house? Solely mine. And staying that way. And then, as she printed a stack of legal letters, I asked her a question. "What happens if I send them this chat log?" She looked at me, calmly. "Nothing, if you just send it. But if we attach a cease and desist, if we notify them they're being removed from your will, if we spell out exactly how their actions constitute digital harassment of a vulnerable adult, then they'll understand." Understand what? That I had woken up. That their little leftover joke at the dinner table wasn't just unkind, it was the last straw. They turned me into content. Now I was turning the narrative. And this time, the audience would be the law. The funny thing about silence is that it makes people comfortable. They assume silence is surrender, that if you don't shout, you must not be hurting, that if you don't fight back, you must not care. But my silence wasn't weakness. It was observation. While they laughed behind their screens and shared videos of my grief like party favors, I was watching, listening, learning. I kept my mouth shut and opened my eyes. And what I saw changed everything. I went back through old conversations, texts from Leo asking for a small signature on a bank document, Paige suggesting I move into a more manageable space, even though I loved my home, Daniel dropping hints about how inheritance should reflect family effort. They hadn't just mocked me, they'd been circling me, like buzzards. I started writing everything down, dates, messages, interactions, and then I started pulling away. I didn't attend Paige's brunch the following weekend. I didn't text back when Leo sent his generic "How are you?" message. I didn't answer the door when Daniel came by to check in. They noticed. Oh, they noticed. Paige. "Mum, are you okay? You've been quiet." Leo. "Heard you've been distant lately. Let's not make things weird." Weird? I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just smiled, alone, in my kitchen, and continued my work. The lawyer helped me update my will, every line rewritten with clarity, precision, control. My original will had split everything equally: the house, the savings, the insurance. Martin and I believed in fairness. We believed that love would carry our children forward. But now the new will said something else. It left a small token amount to each child, just enough for them to recognize the loss. The rest? A scholarship fund in Martin's name for underprivileged youth who had no one in their corner. It would be called the Quiet Strength Foundation. I thought that was fitting. I changed my medical proxy to my old friend Jeanette. She was the one who brought me soup when I was sick, who called me just to say hi, who cried when Martin died. Not my children, not the ones who laughed. The cease and desist letters were the final step. They were polite, professional, cold. Each one detailed the invasion of privacy, the distribution of unauthorized recordings, and the emotional harassment I'd experienced. It warned of legal consequences should they continue, and it made something else crystal clear. They were no longer in control. No more financial decisions, no access to property, no involvement in medical choices, and most importantly, no place in my will. I mailed them on a Wednesday morning. The air was crisp. The post office line was short. I stood at the counter, handed over the envelopes, and felt nothing. No fear, no anxiety, just stillness. That night, I made myself a cup of tea, sat by the window, looked out at the garden Martin used to tend. It had overgrown a bit, but I saw beauty in its wildness, in its refusal to be tamed. The phone rang the next day. It was Daniel. I let it go to voicemail, then Paige, then Leo. By Friday, there were over a dozen missed calls, and the group chat, yes, the same one, was suddenly silent. Someone had deleted all the media, all the messages, trying to erase the past. But I had screenshots, and more importantly, I had clarity. I wasn't the one who needed forgiveness. They were. And now, they were going to have to sit with the consequences. Because this time, I wasn't playing the role of grieving mother, fragile elder, or overlooked widow. I was the storm they didn't see coming. And I was just getting started. There's a kind of quiet power in putting pen to paper, especially when it's your own signature on your own terms. That Friday morning, I signed the final documents at Megan's office. Revised will? Done. Medical proxy? Updated. Revocation of power of attorney? Notarized. Cease and desist letters? Sent, confirmed, and legally binding. It felt ceremonial, not like revenge, not petty, just right. You see, my children believed I was too sentimental to protect myself. They thought if they wrapped their manipulation in smiles and just checking in messages, I'd never look deeper. They forgot I once balanced a household on a teacher's salary while nursing a sick husband and raising 3 kids who didn't know the meaning of sacrifice. They didn't expect me to remember the fine print, but I did. They didn't expect me to have the strength, but I had more than they'd ever know. The house was the biggest piece. A modest 2-bedroom, paid off 15 years ago, sitting on a corner lot with a small garden and an oak tree Martin planted the year our youngest was born. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, ours. And for years I had planned to pass it down. I imagined Leo moving in with his family, or Daniel using it for their kids one day. Paige always said she loved the window light in the kitchen. But now, none of them would get it. The house was transferred to a trust, the Evelyn Green Foundation. The trust's mission? To provide short-term housing for women over 60 displaced by domestic or family abuse. Women like me. Women who needed a place to breathe again. The living room where my children once unwrapped Christmas gifts would now offer comfort to someone who'd been told she was too much, too dramatic, too old. The kitchen that once filled with laughter would now cook meals for someone who'd forgotten what warmth felt like. Martin would have been proud. A week passed before the storm arrived. It started with Daniel. He showed up at my doorstep unannounced, just after dusk. I didn't open the door, but I saw him through the curtain, pacing, agitated, phone in hand. After a few minutes, he knocked harder. "Mum, come on, don't do this, let's talk." I stayed silent. He called out again. "I get it, you're mad, but this is extreme. We were just joking. That video wasn't even serious. Courtney didn't mean it. But I meant it. And that's what mattered now." He left after 20 minutes. No apology, just frustration. 2 days later, Leo called. Then Courtney. Then Paige. Paige was the only one who left a voicemail worth mentioning. "Mum, I'm sorry. Okay? It got out of hand. But don't throw away everything over a mistake." A mistake? They hadn't tripped over their words. They had planned it, recorded it, laughed, shared. It wasn't one mistake. It was months of cruelty wrapped in emojis and hashtags. I didn't reply. Instead, I did something else. I called my friend Jeanette and invited her over. We made tea, played cards, and laughed until midnight. I hadn't laughed like that in years. The next morning, I received an email from Megan. The documents were officially filed, and the scholarship fund, named after Martin, had been approved. I sat back in my chair and exhaled. Not the breath of someone finished, the breath of someone free. Later that week, I stood in the garden, trimming back the roses. The doorbell rang. It was a delivery, a bouquet, from Paige. The note read, "We miss you. Please call. Love, your children." No apology, no accountability, just a plea. I placed the flowers in the compost bin. Because by then, I had realized something profound. Forgiveness does not require reunion. And peace does not mean returning to the table where they served you pain and called it love. I didn't need them to change. I just needed them out of my way. They came knocking one by one. First Daniel, with his forced concern and an apology that danced around the real issue. Then Leo, hands shoved into his coat pockets, pretending this was all a big misunderstanding. Paige didn't show up in person. She sent messages, emails, a carefully crafted apology over text, complete with a long paragraph about family and how hard it's been for all of us. But none of them said the words I needed to hear. Not one of them said, "I'm sorry I laughed while you cried." They were sorry they got caught, sorry their comfort was threatened, sorry I stopped playing my part. Daniel was the loudest. He stood on my porch one Saturday afternoon, arms crossed. "You can't just shut us out, Mum." I didn't say a word. "I mean, this is still our family. You raised us better than this." That made me laugh. A dry, bitter sound I didn't recognize as mine. "I did raise you better," I said quietly, still behind the door. "But I can't control what you chose to become." There was a pause. Then the anger surfaced. "So that's it? You're just cutting us off?" "I'm giving you the gift of distance," I replied. He muttered something and walked away, shaking his head. Then came Leo and Courtney. They didn't even wait for an invitation. They showed up together, unannounced. Courtney wore sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. Leo kept clearing his throat like he was preparing a speech. "We just want to explain," Courtney started. "That night, at the house, it wasn't meant to be malicious." "Then what was it meant to be?" I asked. She blinked. "It was just a moment. I didn't think you'd take it so personally. You recorded me crying." There it was, the truth, hanging in the air like smoke. I was grieving, and you turned it into content. Leo stepped forward. You're being harsh. No, I said. You've just never seen me with boundaries. Courtney's mouth opened, but Leo touched her arm. Let's go. They left without another word, and I watched them walk down my driveway, the same path they used to run barefoot as children. I didn't feel triumph, just clarity. A week later, I got a letter. Not a card, not a voice memo, a formal letter from Paige. It was printed on cream paper in her elegant cursive handwriting. Mum, I know I hurt you. I see now how that chat must have felt. I wish I could undo it. I've been replaying it all in my head, and I hate who I was in that moment. Please give me the chance to do better. Please talk to me. It was the closest thing to remorse I'd received. I folded it slowly, placed it in my drawer. I didn't respond. I wasn't interested in performative guilt. I was interested in change, and it takes more than a letter to prove that. Jeanette visited again that weekend. She brought lemon cookies and her laugh that fills up a room. We sat by the fire and talked about small things, weather, books, the neighbor's yappy dog. And at some point she turned to me and said, "You're standing taller." I smiled. I feel taller. Because something had shifted. I no longer needed to explain myself. I didn't need to prove my pain or justify my decisions. I had been recorded, ridiculed, dismissed, and still I stood. That's power. Not revenge, not cruelty. Just the simple decision to stop letting people hurt you in your own home. The next morning, I opened the front door to water the plants, and there it was. A small package. No note, no return address. Inside was a flash drive. When I plugged it into my laptop, I already knew what it was. The original video. The one Courtney had recorded. Along with it, a folder of screenshots from the chat, all deleted now. The digital ghosts of every cruel word. A silent offering, a digital surrender. But it was too late. Because I had already sent those same screenshots to Megan. And Megan had already made copies. Courtney must have realized that what they did could cost them more than just a place in my will. They had mocked me in private. Now I had made the consequences public. And no matter how many files they deleted, the story was already written. By me. The invitation came in a plain envelope, tucked among utility bills and coupons. It was addressed to Mrs. Evelyn Green, handwritten in neat block letters. Inside, an invitation to the unveiling of the Evelyn Martin Green Resilience Scholarship Fund at the local community centre, the same building where I once taught free literacy classes on weekends, where Martin had helped paint murals for the children's wing before his heart weakened, a place built on quiet service, much like our lives. I stared at the card, tears gathering, not from sadness but from something deeper, something closer to peace. The morning of the event, I wore a soft lavender dress. Martin always said it made my eyes look gentler. I pinned his old watch to my wrist, even though the battery had long died. It felt like carrying a piece of him. Jeanette met me out front. She wore a pink scarf and brought a thermos of herbal tea. "Just in case I got jittery," she said with a wink. As we entered the hall, applause rippled through the room. Not for me exactly, but for what the scholarship meant. On the stage stood a podium, a brass plaque covered with velvet cloth, and a group of young women seated in the front row, first-year college students, each wearing hopeful eyes and borrowed blazers. One of them, a girl no older than 19, stood to speak. "My name is Sasha," she said. "I'm the first recipient of the Green Resilience Scholarship. I want to thank Mrs. Evelyn Green, not just for helping me go to college, but for reminding me that our story doesn't end with pain. It begins with what we choose to do after." I felt my throat tighten. That was everything. Not revenge, not punishment, but meaning. After the event, people came up to shake my hand. Some were strangers. Others were women I hadn't seen in years. Old neighbors, former students, friends who whispered, "I heard what your family did. I'm so sorry." But I wasn't. Not anymore. Because I had rewritten my story, reclaimed it. The family chat may have been their private little joke, but now, this plaque, this room, these girls who would rise because of it, that was my legacy. A week later, I passed by the old family photo still hanging in the hallway, one we took 10 Christmases ago, back when things still felt whole. Martin at the center, me beside him, the kids surrounding us in matching sweaters. I looked at it a long time. Then I gently lifted the frame off the wall. I didn't break it, didn't burn it, just placed it in a box labeled Past Seasons. Because that's all it was now, a season, one that came and went, and it no longer defined me. I spend more time outside these days. The garden has become a quiet place of healing. I planted lavender where the old rose bush used to be. It's wild, fragrant, unapologetic, just like I've learned to be. Sometimes I sit out there with a book. Other times, I write letters, not to my children, but to myself, to the woman I used to be, to the one who cried behind closed doors and thought no one would care. I tell her, "You were never too much. You were never a joke. You were never wrong for feeling deeply. You were just unseen. And now the whole town sees you. They still call sometimes, the kids. Leo sends emails. Daniel left a voicemail last week. Paige mailed a birthday card, unsigned, but with the heart drawn in the corner. I haven't responded. Not because I want to hurt them, because I don't need them anymore. They made their choices, and I made mine. People often ask if I regret it, if I miss them, if I ever wish I'd just stayed quiet. But here's what I tell them. Silence may protect the peace, but sometimes it protects the wrong people. I chose to break that silence. And in doing so, I found something stronger than family approval. I found self-respect. I was the woman they laughed at, the one they thought too broken, too dramatic, too old to matter. But in the end, I was also the woman who took the last word and turned it into a legacy.